guys, welcome back to the Digital Pen Pals podcast. My name is Zach, and I'm here with my co-host, Lincoln.
How's it going? I'm Tux,
How
or Lincoln.
How you doing tonight?
Doing pretty great. How are you?
Doing good, yeah. Just been chugging along, working on making videos, and yeah, just been doing a lot of more different stuff, which has been interesting. What about you?
Pretty much the same. I've had a pretty busy week and lots of fun, stress, and projects. You know, life of an artist.
Yeah. um, yeah. So for today's episode, we kind of just wanted to take a little step back and kind of, I guess, do a little bit more like reflecting, because I think that's always important to do as like artists. Because if you don't think about things you've accomplished and both things that you haven't, sometimes you don't take that time to like learn about yourself, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and quick celebration. We're doing pretty good on the podcast. We're on episode 14, so that's so exciting, and we've had so many amazing guests. And moving forward, we're gonna try and have more guests on. If you've noticed in the last recent videos, almost every episode was a guest episode. I think the last
Yeah.
3 or 4 even have been guest episodes, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much been mostly guest episodes for, I mean, probably almost close to a month now.
Yeah, and we have a system down now where we have how many guests on like the backlog? Like I think 3 maybe.
Yeah, we have like 3 confirmed right
Yeah,
now
3 like
as
scheduled
guests.
and ready to record. So yeah, so look forward to that. We have some super special guests coming on the podcast for us in the future. And going forward, it's going to be a lot like that. You'll be less hearing from just me and Zach and another voice. We hope you guys have enjoyed hearing from a third person as well.
Right. And if you guys have any like favorite guests that you've heard so far, we'd love to hear it in the comments. If you guys are on the YouTube channel, we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But yeah, for you, Lincoln, what has been like the best thing to come out of doing these interviews with other artists? Is there something that's like been like a takeaway for you?
I think we talked about this a little bit with Joey last week, but all these
Mm-hmm.
artists are like, you see them on social media, you see them on Twitter, you see them on ArtStation and all these websites, Instagram, or wherever you consume your art. There's a million places now, but you see them and you almost get intimidated because they're such fantastic artists, and you see them as this untouchable, just like, wow, this person is a great artist. I will never reach this level. I will never. Almost, you sometimes will think like, get in, like I'll never reach their level of accomplishment. I'll never be their equal. But then when I've gotten to know each one of these artists, I mean, if you listen to the podcast, like they're just people. They're good people, just like us, and they're super kind, and they have very human struggles and very human experiences and lives. They're not some sort of superior being because they're good at art.
Yeah.
It's been very humbling.
And like that's something that like I've been like thinking about lately too, is like you know, as us both wanting to be like content creators as well as like, you know, artists and stuff, and trying to include our art and stuff with content creation.
What do you mean wanting
I
to
think
be?
it's
We are content creators, Zach.
well, that's true. It's true. But I think like I've always thought about this end goal of like, oh, like, you know, when you reach this certain point, you know, you see, you know, a lot of other content creators or something that have like, you know, these huge numbers, or, you know, they seem to have it all kind of put together, right? Like, oh, their life must be so great, or they're just must be loving it. But I think a lot of that sometimes, like, it almost causes more stress sometimes, I feel, because then you start to get a little bit more aware of like what kind of art you're making or what kind of things you're doing. And that's something that I've been experiencing lately, which has kind of been like both good and bad. But I think that's what's interesting is, despite I guess if you want to call it you know, whatever your size may be on like social media, whether it's like big or small, it's like no matter what, you all have the same issues. You know, even the person with, you know, 100,000 or 1 million people watching them, it's like they still I'm sure go through a lot of the same stresses and anxieties and worries. Um, because I feel like there's always problems to be had, and you think, oh, it's gonna be the solution is gonna be like, oh, when I reach X, place in my life, it's gonna fix things. Like you can go for anything. Like for me, it's like, oh, well, once I graduate college, things are gonna get better for me, and in some ways they do, but then there's other problems that like come up. So it's like, every phase of life, you trade off the problems you have in that situation, and you basically get a couple sets, a new set of a few new problems to be solved. And so I think that's something that I've been trying to think about lately is like, despite like growth or whatever, it's like, you're still having problems to be solved, and things aren't always what they seem. But yeah, that's one of like the deep thoughts I've been thinking about lately.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of do that as well. Like I say, okay, once I get this, my life will be better. And then like this happens, or like I get past that point, and then it's like, shoot, there was a part after this? I thought it was just supposed to be live happily ever after.
This is supposed to be Disney, right?
What the heck? It's supposed to be over. But it's a constant thing, and there's a lot of success, and there's also, I would say, even more failure. But I think the more failure you have, the greater your success feels or tastes.
Right. I think like failure drives your experience. Because there are times where you do have positive experiences, like you have successes, you have triumphs and stuff, whatever you want to call it. But and those are good teaching moments. But I feel like the really big teaching moments are when you're messing up or failing. Because I feel like sort of like the weight of trying something new or trying to do something huge can be kind of a lot, and you have a lot of high hopes for it, and when it doesn't go through, it feels like like, oh, well, what was the point of it? But I guess retrospectively it like teaches you more than it would if you had succeeded at it.
Yeah, exactly.
If that makes sense.
One story I can think of about like success and failure and the contrast of it is, how long ago did I start my pin business? I think it was like 8 months ago. But 8 months ago I started my enamel pin business, and it started off pretty good and went pretty steady. It was doing pretty decently for something that I just started. But then January and December came, and I got almost like no sales in January and December. And it was like the most demotivating thing ever. And like I was doing everything like I quote needed to. I was doing all the social media posts. I was advertising. I was trying to interact with people and be like, hey guys, I do pins. Like, does anybody want these pins? Just like I'm almost getting like desperate, and I started to feel really bad. Like, dang, maybe where it sucks. Maybe I'm producing a bad product. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, and all these negative thoughts go into your head, and it's very defeating. But then come February, and I pretty much didn't really do much different, but like I just kept doing the same stuff, and I kept advertising as I needed to, showing off the cool stuff about pin making, sharing my experiences in art and pin making with the world. But February and like early March has been my best of all time for my enamel pin business, and like not to brag or anything, but I've made a lot more sales than I have before, and it's been such a motivating experience if you have it in context comparatively to those 2 months of like near nothing. And it was just such a rewarding experience.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, it's so frustrating because like I've gone through similar stuff since I've been like, because I started doing like I opened up a whole sticker shop and website like, oh man, I think it was close to around like maybe around like May or June or something of 2020, because I didn't have anything else to do, and I was really interested in wanting to eventually get to sell artwork and things, and I thought stickers would be really cool, and looked into how to make them, and so I just I was like, well, I can manufacture them, but then that involves some money that I didn't really want to put into it, for all the stickers I wanted to make, and at first it was kind of hard. Like I got a few sales, and then towards a little bit more towards the like October, November. I actually hit quite a few sales, and I was able to with with having to purchase ink, uh, the sticker paper, and all of that stuff, all the other stuff that I use for like packaging and stuff. By the time I was able to make some more sales, I was like, oh, I've actually recouped all the funds that I've thrown into this. And so that was a really good feeling to feel like I was finally like out of the hole negative wise. Not that it was like a lot, but it was just enough to make me feel like, okay, well, it was kind of justified almost. And so that was good. But yeah, since then things have just kind of dropped for me as well, with stuff like that, and that tends to happen with a lot of things that you do. Um, but yeah, like definitely like what you said, like the pattern of like being like still just trying, like despite it seemingly not working. It's like, well, if you quit, like of course it's not going to work because then there's nothing there for there to be the option to work. So as long as you throw in, something, you'd be like, hey, here's a few things to try to see if I can't get this thing to keep going or to get the ball rolling again. But if you throw in the towel, then it's game over for sure because you made it that way. You decided to just quit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely a struggle when things just don't work out the way you envision them, or they seem to be working really well, and then all of a sudden it just goes through like a direct cut of just a hiatus of nothing. It's just crickets, and you're like, okay, well, what does this mean? And then you start being a little too like self-critical. You're like, well, maybe this isn't good enough, like you said, like, oh, maybe my art's not good enough, and you're like, oh, well, maybe like stuff I'm doing isn't good, or maybe I'm doing something wrong. It's just all sorts of thoughts go through your head, and it's like it's very self-destructive. Um, and I think to a point it is good to like be retrospective. Like I said in the beginning, like it's good to look back on things you've accomplished and failed at, and like learn from it, and do things differently if you need to. But at the same time, I feel like I think like 50% of the time it's like mostly just like just stick with it. You're just starting something. It's gonna take a long time. Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah, and I think
Kind of thing.
another one of the hard parts too is I was talking to my friend about this the other day. Is we with social media and all these fantastic, wonderful people we see on the internet all the time. I feel like we're in a constant state of seeing someone succeed, and it makes us think, oh, that's how my life should be. I should be constantly succeeding, which is quite the opposite to how life goes. Obviously, you're going to be succeeding in some capacity every single day, but you're not going to be going viral every single day. You're not going to be blasting off every single day. You're always going to have some sort of down day. And you look at
Right.
even the most successful artists and like do like an experiment. Like think of one of your favorite like artists or content creators or something, and just pay attention to like if they're going viral right now, like that's not gonna last. Like nobody can be viral forever, and it's good. It comes in
Mm-hmm.
eddies and flows. And hey, just because someone isn't gonna be viral forever doesn't mean they're not gonna be viral again later. It goes up and down, and as smaller creators, when it's down, that means it's near nothing. For bigger creators, when it's down, it's at a manageable level that can still keep them afloat. But for us that are still smaller, it's a lot less. But with social media, we constantly see creator A succeeding, and then maybe creator A isn't doing as well. Now creator B is succeeding, so they're everywhere, all over every front page, over every headline, and we're hearing about them. And then maybe creator B stops doing good. Now creator C is doing really good, and then maybe creator C drops down. Now creator A is doing good again, and it's just an endless cycle and train of seeing all these people succeed, and it puts into our mind, wow, these people are successful all the time, and everything they do is perfect. When in reality, I'm sure they've tried and failed, and some things didn't do out as good as you thought. Like think of your favorite musician. There's always an album that you don't like from that musician. Of course, there's some people who have amazing albums. Like I love everything that Tally Hall puts out and everything that Limbo puts out. But for some artists, like there's some albums that they put out that are just not super great, and you're like, wow, this is nothing like their last album. This sucks.
Right.
And that's just how it is sometimes with art.
Yeah. There's definitely like that pushback when like you know, um, it's like so it's like kind of annoying because you're like, I want to do what I want to do, but also I gotta do stuff that like gets me exposure or like stuff that is actually fun or entertaining to watch or something. Um, and I think that's kind of the struggle. The balance is like um, doing what you love and also having time to do things that will get you exposure that will be more experimental. And just like you mentioned with like the example of artists, that's like really good like comparison is you see them and like of course they're making a lot of money because they people stream their music or they buy their music or whatever, their albums. And so like financially they're doing really well, where if they have a hiatus it's like, well, it's okay, they don't really have to worry about their funds too much at that point. But at the same time it's like you kind of only like listen to them, you don't think about them all the time. So if you actually put yourself in their shoes, like you have to be that person like the entire lifetime. Like imagine what it's like making an album, then doing really well for a long time, but then having like a long hiatus and like, okay, I'm gonna make an album. Then they go make an album and then they release it and then it's like, okay, that wasn't well received. I waited all that time to make an album and now it didn't do too well. And so I can imagine that's like super like frustrating because you're like, I thought this is what you guys would like. I tried something a little bit different. And I feel like we can kind of relate to that because we've had moments where like, guys, I tried something super innovative and original and you guys didn't like it. Like, yeah, we like the same old stuff. You're like, oh, okay.
I don't want to make the
I
same
guess
stuff.
I'll just like go back to doing the same old stuff that everybody does. So it's hard to put your own spin on stuff, and that's what kind of stinks when it's failure because you feel like sometimes you take it personally. You're like, well, you rejected my original or like more creative idea that I had that I didn't, besides the stuff that everyone else does.
We should
And so
get
that can be
we should get a
frustrating.
musician on the podcast so they can tell us a little bit more about this.
We definitely should. I was about to say, I was like, those are just my hot takes, but I'm like, I would love to interview somebody who's in the art industry music industry that we could talk to kind of get more of like their take on that and their experience of what it's like doing that.
Future guest. ...
Yes, yes. But yeah, failure stinks. It's debilitating sometimes, but like for myself recently I had a Kickstarter that had been kind of pushing as much as I could with my limited ability. But
This is a project
the
we kind of worked on
Kickstarter,
together. I helped you
yeah,
with all the
yeah,
manufacturing
so you,
stuff and helped you with all the financing and whatnot.
yeah, and so we figured all that stuff out, and it was kind of a group effort figuring that out. And I'd worked so many hours on all the artwork and then the graphic design.
You put
Like I
so
spent
much
an
time
entire
into that stuff, and it turned out so well. Like,
yeah,
the designs, I think, were
yeah.
fantastic. I pledged $50 on Kickstarter. I wanted to get 5 designs, and yeah, like his Kickstarter looked super official. Like he did everything that quote he should do. The designs weren't bad, and everything looked great.
Mhm. Cuz like, we really thought about, cuz you knew more about, Kickstarters than I did, despite, we both don't have any experience making Kickstarters, but you at least had done research and talked to other people that were really, involved in doing those things successfully. And so, taking all that information and throwing it into the Kickstarter that I did, went through, like, oh, I'll do this. And I was like, oh, actually, this doesn't work. Let me change this. Let me change that. And, I spent an entire, like, Saturday, that's not including other days that I've spent, but, leading up to it, I spent an entire Saturday working on it. Actually ended up watching like 5 Marvel movies in the background while I was working on it, doing the final touches on everything. Um, and so I just had poured everything I had into it, and it kind of felt like you're at the end of like some sort of like if you've ever gone to the gym and done like some sort of workout routine, you feel like you've gone as far as you can, and then it was like that last day I felt like, okay, this is really everything that I have right now. This is as much ability and knowledge as I have, and so when I got it all set up and ready, I was like, okay, let's just submit it. Let's just make it go live, and I'll finally be out of my hair, and I can just have it up there and feel accomplished. And I think that was satisfying, and it was satisfying to see it up there and live, and just to know what I was able to do, and kind of like, assess, be like, okay, well, if I can do this, what else can I do? Like, I could go bigger, I could go smaller if I want to, with different things, with different ideas or projects. And so that was really helpful to like know that I had that in me to do it. Um, but yeah, at the end of everything, we had a really good run. We had um, about 9 backers, and like I'm thankful for everyone, especially those who might be listening. Thank you for backing that project and believing in the Kickstarter. But yeah, at the end we weren't able to get it fully funded, and so the Kickstarter didn't go through, which I kind of had a feeling as the days went on. I kind of realized what was going on, and realizing that there were some things that I could have done maybe differently, things that that sometimes are just like you sometimes have to have like a few successful Kickstarters before you can start to get like, you know, people to come back on projects. That's why you see projects sometimes get well overfunded, or they get like funded within like 30 minutes or something crazy. And it's because those people have already done Kickstarters a bunch, and they've kind of developed or like made a reputation for themselves on Kickstarter. And so they have all these people that are willing to back all the projects they do typically. And so yeah, just all those like little things that I've learned, that I want to go taking forward, because although it is disappointing because it is technically a failure, but to me I feel like accomplished in that, despite the failure, the feeling of like, okay, I actually did that, that feels good, and I can learn from it, and I can actually improve on the next one, that overall makes it feel like it's a win for me.
Yeah, I think finishing projects
For sure.
is super important as an artist. Even if the project fails, if it's tied to like money, or if it's like a video project or something and things maybe don't turn out as they could, you still get to step back and say, "Hey, I put a lot of time and work into this, and I'm proud of what I've done, and the next one will just be all the better." And with something like that, with so much time and effort and love and whatnot poured into it, failing, like you're left with basically like a few options. You can either just be upset about it and make a bunch of excuses why it didn't work out, or maybe blame other people why a project didn't work out, especially when it's something on Kickstarter where it relies on somebody else. Or you can say, "Hey, I'm really proud of this. I did this," and you can keep going, and you can keep making better and better stuff.
Yeah. And for me, I think that's like the main takeaway is just like trying to look at the positive sides of things. Because, like you said, you can't make excuses. And, I knew going in, there's a lot of factors that play into, because it's like a whole new entire environment, um, uh, a whole new market, I guess, doing Kickstarter. And there's a lot of things to learn. There's only so much you can learn just from observing other Kickstarters and talking to other people that have done some. Um, and so it's interesting because you can do everything right, like, basically by the book. You're like, well, I did this and this right. I formatted it correctly to have all these cool, like, things. Uh, um, but, you feel like, oh, this artwork actually is, like, better than a lot of this other stuff that may be a little bit more generic looking. So this actually stands out on, like, the page of Kickstarters if people are just scrolling through them or trying to find enamel pin Kickstarters. So you can pour everything into it, but at the end of the day, sometimes things just don't work out, and it doesn't mean anything. Like, people you know, didn't believe in it, or it wasn't good enough, because you can't really see the back end of that stuff. Maybe for whatever reason it just wasn't discoverable, or it just wasn't seen by the right people, or it wasn't the right timing for people to be like looking at those specific kind of Kickstarters. Who knows? And so that's kind of the struggle, is being able to be a little bit more like glass half full kind of attitude, and going into things realizing there are going to be things to learn, there's going to be failure, but I can only control so much. But yeah, just taking what you can from your failures and learning from them, as hard as it is.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. So what's next?
But like for you, like what have you learned, like with failing? what's a way that you like overcome those feelings of like negativity?
So one of the things that I did with my enamel pins and sticker business is I kind of felt like things were getting stagnant. I felt like things like I was making pins to almost like sell them, and I kind of took a step back and I thought, like, why did I start my enamel pin business? I didn't start it to make money. Like, of course, it would be great to be to like make a bunch of money off enamel pins or to make a bunch of money off art. Like, money helps you like free yourself financially, and that's something I feel like almost everybody desires. It's not necessarily to be rich, but to be financially stable, and that would be fantastic with art. But that's not the reason I started making pins. I started making pins because I I collect pins personally, and I love them, and I want to produce high quality designs and cool designs for other people and for myself. And so from there, I started working on more designs and showing it off to people and saying like, hey, what do you guys think? Like, what kind of design? I did a little bit of market research. I started hyping people up on new stickers and all sorts of new stuff, and I went and I created more, and I just made more, and I kind of rekindled that passion that may have been doused out a little bit by cash. And I made a new pin design, and before that one was even out, my sales went back up in February, and now I have another one coming in, which should be coming in like a week or two. Super excited for it. But this one's more of an experiment that I haven't really talked about it much yet. But it's been super inspiring, especially because these last few months have just been fantastic. So I'm excited to continue to make more pins and keep creating as an artist, even when things get down, because at the end of the day, we're artists and we have that passion to create and make and all that fun stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely like the core. It's just you want to make stuff and you feel happy despite, no matter what, you feel accomplished. And I think that's what's been interesting for me is like as certain things have failed, I'm like, okay, well that's cool. Sometimes it depends on circumstances, but for me sometimes it's helpful to be like, okay, I need a break. I worked really hard on this one thing. It didn't go well. A little disappointing, but I need to take some time, go away from whatever specific thing I was trying to do that failed, go and try some new things, kind of renew some creative energy and juices, and take some time off from like doing art and stuff, and then jump back into that specific kind of project again. And so for me, like I really do want to do another Kickstarter, but at this point I definitely want to take like a little bit of a break from trying to pursue that too much, and kind of give it some time to simmer, give myself some time to think about it, some time to reevaluate what I'm doing, and that can go with any project, like just giving yourself time to process everything. And in the meantime, I've been doing like other stuff. I've been making different kinds of videos. I've been even working on like some animation stuff. Right now I have an animation in the works, just like a little short animation, something that's definitely outside of like what I thought I could do with like 2D animation. And so it's been fun to experiment with that.
Sometimes it's fun to impress
so,
yourself. It's fun
yeah,
to make.
I should be like, okay, well, this is ambitious, but I'm gonna keep with it.
Yeah, it
And
kind of comes back to that thing that Mitchell from Atron Studios was saying. Just make some art for yourself. Like, doesn't matter like what other people think. I guess if you're impressing yourself and if the art's making you happy and feel fulfilled, then it's good.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like it's um, art is expressive and it's supposed to help you either, I guess, impress yourself or express a feeling or an emotion or express something visually, I guess. Or I guess if you're an artist, audibly express that. But I think it's always good to just be able to take a step back from your failures and evaluate where you're at. And I feel like I always find it interesting how like our podcast episodes have kind of, at least the ones that I feel like we've done, like just you and me, they've kind of like coincided with stuff that's been happening on in the background as we're trying to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's interesting how like I'm not a person that I don't believe in consequences or not.
You don't believe in
I mean,
consequences.
no, that's not the word
Exactly,
I meant.
very
I
much
meant to
exist.
say
I think that's something I can prove to you that exists.
no, no consequences. No, I don't believe in coincidences
Mhm.
is the word. I believe in them being sort of, I guess, however you want to think about it, but I almost feel like there's sort of like destiny or just like that's too like coincidental to be like coincidental. I don't know how to make that make sense.
Yeah. It's
But
like, why did this
I feel
happen
like a lot
here
of
at this time so perfectly for everything to work out?
yeah, like it just works and it fits.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like with where we're at, there's always something that happens, like we weren't able to, just to be open, we weren't able to get um uh anybody to really interview this week on the podcast. And so that was kind of interesting to kind of reflect and kind of associate what's going on right now is like we've both collectively had a lot of failures. And not that this is like a big one or anything by any means, but just like we're trying to figure things out, and sometimes things go as planned, and then sometimes they don't go as planned. And so it's interesting to kind of like relate everything together and kind of like think about it collectively.
And just to make things clear, it wasn't Zach's fault that we don't have a guest this weekend.
No, it was both our faults.
Zach, I was busy Thursday afternoon, and then I had a wedding reception, and then a wedding, and then I was busy all day today. It was my fault.
No. It was no, on the record, it was both our faults.
Okay, if you want to take credit, sure. Dude, I'll take this blame off me. No more guilt. But I think we have next week we have 2 guests. Friday and Saturday.
Yeah,
right?
we have guests lined up, so I mean, you have like a little hiccup one week, but it's like, hey, but like look at this.
Yeah, and I think we're even going to get to the point where we're recording episodes a week in advance. So
Yeah, I really hope to get to that point
that'll
too.
be a big weight off our shoulders in case an emergency happens. That way we can
Mm-hmm.
everything
Like a weekend like this weekend was.
Yeah, to you guys nothing will change, but to us it'll be a lot helpful.
Yeah. It's like a lot of that background stuff that, from other people and creators and artists that you don't see. You don't get to see, you only get to see the final products. You don't get to see like the struggle behind the scenes.
Yeah. Everybody has those struggles. If somebody says that they've never struggled in their journey, then they are probably selling you something or just flat out lying. That
Yeah.
being said, everything about the podcast has been super easy, super successful. We haven't had any failure with the podcast. Every single interview has been perfect. Every single episode has had a crazy, amazing amount of views, and we're so happy. Actually, that last one was super true.
Yeah.
That came off as disingenuous. I was I was just trying to say, getting the podcast started and running it is sometimes stressful, and it's a little bumpy sometimes, but we're getting it done, and we're happy to do it.
Yeah. And that's the thing, as time goes on, certain things get easier, and then you can incorporate other elements. Like when we first started, it was just me and Lincoln, so we had to figure, the setup for all that and figure out the flow and everything. But at the same time, like, then you introduce like, okay, we want to do interviews eventually, but we don't really know how to do them. And so now we're doing interviews, and so you start doing that, and it's like, okay, well now we need to like include another person, so that's 3 audios we have to incorporate into the recording. And
twice as long.
how do we do that? Yeah, and so like, how do we do that? And what's the system that we're gonna have? How are we gonna like schedule people? So we eventually created like like in a spreadsheet for it and things like that, and that's been really helpful.
Lots of fun stuff.
And so yeah, lots of fun background stuff, and yeah, just certain things get easier, and then sometimes things get a little bit harder, but then you eventually figure things out. And that's just goes like with anything creatively, is you exercise till you can get to a point where you give it all you got, and then it starts to get easy and you kind of plateau, and then you have to kind of I guess in like an exercise analogy is adding more weights. If you're able to lift 20 pounds, like, okay, well, now that I'm comfortable with this, how about we add 5 more pounds?
Yeah. And
But
as an artist, try and every time you have some sort of failure, try and see what you can learn from it, and try and celebrate your failures, because a failure is just a list before a big success.
yeah. And like I've mentioned before, I think on the podcast, is just trying does equal success, because even if you're trying and it's failing like up the wazoo, nothing's working, but you're at least trying, like that's the whole point, you know? Like, oh no, like I don't know, like I missed the bus or something to school or something, I don't know. But you're like, "Oh, well, I'm going to at least keep trying." So, I mean, that's not a really good analogy in these trying times, but uh you kind of get what I mean. Like you're like, "Oh, well, X thing didn't work out. I wasn't planning on that." But I can at least try this, and like at least attempt to recuperate whatever I lost. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense, but that's kind of my like motto in life, is like, well, this didn't work out, but I'm gonna try something else, I
Yeah.
guess, or at
Just
least
keep chugging along.
try.
Just keep going.
Yeah.
I found if I get too caught up in failures, it usually leads to my demise.
Oh yeah, definitely.
With that being said,
But
thank you so much for listening. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Zach?
no, just keep going, chugging along. We're right there with you. You know, no matter who it is, everyone feels those highs and lows, and you know, we're all in this
And
together,
if you have
trying to grow and trying to do
and
stuff.
if you guys have any questions or anything, please leave it in the comments, or feel free to DM us. Since we are small creators, we are very responsive.
Yes, very responsive and eager. Not desperate though, just
I'm
eager.
desperate.
I know, I was joking. We're desperate.
Anyways, thank you so much for listening to the Digital Pen Pals podcast. We hope you all have an awesome week, and we will see you next week with a super awesome guest, if everything goes according to plan. Well, regardless, they're going to be a super awesome guest. Everybody that comes on the show is a super awesome
Oh
guest.
yeah.
But there's one
Mm-hmm.
currently on the schedule that I'm particularly excited about, that I have
Same.
been playing phone tag with for a while. But thank you guys so much for listening. We love you guys. Have a great one. Bye.
Bye.